Alhamdulillah. First of all, I would just like to say that Allah is the best of planners. I was actually not coming here, and I guess there was some confusion about being, I don't know who put the name on there, but it was just a miscommunication. I had another meeting somewhere else, and I couldn't make it, and then we went to visit a sheikh from the Emirates who just finished a book by Sheikh Abdullah Al-Haddad, and he gave me a copy of the book, and I wanted to give a copy to Habib Ali Al-Jifri and also to say salam to him because I'm leaving tomorrow. So I just asked somebody, how far is SOAS, and they said it's right around the corner. So I said, well, I guess we'll just stop by there. And then we went to SOAS, and this whole group of students were coming out of a class, and they said, oh, we thought we were going to miss your lecture. I said, what lecture? This one. And then they showed me my name was on the thing, so we canceled the other appointment. I'd like to introduce Habib Ali Al-Jifri. He's somebody that I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing for several years. We also have a relationship from wet nursing, so and that's one of the blessings of Islam, is that it unites people through blood marriage and through wet nursing. He comes from a clan in the Yemen known as the Ba'alawi clan, and these are people who are direct descendants of the Prophet ﷺ through Fatima and Ali, and they fled the persecution of the family in Iraq very early on, and were aided by the Yemeni people, and have over the last 1200 years really been the source of a lot of spiritual and intellectual sustenance for the people of Yemen, particularly the valley of Hadramaut. And knowledge is known to be both acquired, and there are two types of knowledge. There's what they call kasbi and wahbi. Kasbi knowledge is what we earn through our efforts, and wahbi knowledge is what is given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so knowledge is of two types, and some of the ulama are gifted in having one, which is the kasb, but not the wahab. And others are gifted in having the wahab, but not the kasb. And then some have the wahab and the kasb together, which is quite unusual. And I'll just give you one example. There's a famous scholar from Fez, Morocco, Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh, and he was completely illiterate, and he was able to interpret incredibly difficult hadiths and verses of the Quran, and the scholars of his age recognized his knowledge. And one scholar once said to him, "Al-ulama warathatul anbiya, mada warithta min rasulillah." The scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. What did you inherit from him? And he said, "Warithtu minhu ummiyatahu." I have inherited his illiteracy. And this is an indication, because the mu'jiza of prophets can also be the karamat of the awliya, except for wahi. So anything that a prophet does as a mu'jiza can be done as a karama, and we believe wathbitan al-awliya karama wa man nafaha fambidan kalama, like Imam al-Daqqani says in the Jawhara. Confirm the karamat of the awliya, and whoever denies them, deny him. So he is, I believe, a very inspired and intuitive teacher. He's had good teachers as well in the Kasbi area, but Allah has given him many insights in our estimation. وَلَا نُزَكِّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَحَدٍ. And he has a great deal to teach us. The thing that I find most profound about not only Habib Ali, but about generally the Ba'alawi clan, and particularly the scholars from among them, and one of my own teachers, Habib Ahmed Mashhur Al-Haddad, may Allah have mercy on him and pleasure, give him his pleasure. He was one of the great illuminated people that I met in my life. And when I met him, I got a glimpse of what it meant to be a Hujjat al-Islam. Because the real proof of Islam has never been in our books, but it's been in the people that this ummah has produced. And the Prophet ﷺ, his proof is not just the Quran, but it's actually his Sahaba. They are the Hujjah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Hasbukallah wa min ittaba'aka min al-mu'minin, Allah is enough for you, and also those who follow you among the believers. And there's two interpretations of that. But the Sahaba are a Hujjah of Islam. And these people, I feel, these scholars that have focused on really purifying their hearts and struggling against their own inner temptations. These are the true proofs of Islam, because Islam, in the end of the day, is not about intellectual theories. It's not about a kind of Mormonism where you have some type of Boy Scout ethics and you be good people. There's plenty of ethical philosophies out there that are very adequate for creating nice civil societies, that we don't need Islam to do that, right? Really. But what Islam is ultimately, it is a vehicle to not only self-knowledge, but knowledge of who created you and where you came from and where you're going to. And that is one of the great gifts of having people in our ummah that continue to recognize that that ultimately is the purpose of Islam and why we were created. فَعَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know that there's no God but Allah. So I hope that you listen attentively to what he says. He's both a simple speaker, and yet he's also a very subtle speaker. So his words are often very simple, but when you begin to actually analyze his argument, you will find that in it there are great subtleties that can often bypass people that are not paying attention to what he's saying. But you're all students, or most of you are students at SOAS, so I know you're the best and the brightest in London. So barakallahu fikum, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, الذي خلق الإنسان فكرمه وأنزل عليه الوحي فعظمه وصلى الله وسلم وبارك وكرم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الأمين على وحي ربه الذي لا ينطق عن الهوى وعلى آبائه وإخوانه من الأنبياء والمرسلين ساداتنا آدم ونوح وإبراهيم وموسى وعيسى ومن بينهم من النبيين وعلى آل كل وصحبهم والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين.
So the Shaykh began by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created the human being, ennobled the human being, fashioned the human being, and then descended upon some of us revelations and magnified the meaning of that. And then prayers and peace upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was sent as a mercy and who was described as one who did not speak from caprice or from desire or passion, but only from what he was told by his Lord. And upon the other remaining fraternity of prophets and messengers, including Adam and Ibrahim and Idris and Isa and John and all of the prophets.
وبالرغم من قلة بضاعتي في اللغة الإنجليزية إلا أني قد شعرت بأني مدحت بما ليس في، فأسأل الله عز وجل أن يجعل ذلك دعاء أتحقق بمقتضاه، إذ علمنا مشايخنا أن إذا مدحنا بما ليس فينا أن نقول آمين، على اعتبار أن هذا المدح دعاء يرجى تحققه للممدوح وللمادح وللسامع. آمين.
So the Habib Ali said, in spite of the fact that my ability in English And in other words, my commercial venture in this language is very insignificant. Nonetheless, I was discerning that in the introduction there was some praise of me that I am unworthy of. And I was taught by our teachers that whenever we are praised for things that we do not deem ourselves worthy of, we say after that, Ameen, believing that in fact it was actually a supplication for what we would hope Allah would help realize in our nature. And so in whatever you heard of my praise, I would just simply say Ameen, and I would also say it that it applies equally to those speaking and to those listening.
وموضوع هذه الليلة هو تساؤل: هل تحتاج الإنسانية إلى وحي؟ أي هل يستغني الإنسان بما أعطي من عقل ومكنة في هذا الوجود عن أن يتصل بتدبير خارج عن قدرته وإرادته يتعامل معه على أساس الانقياد له؟ أم أن الإنسان مستقل بترتيبه وبتدبيره يستغني عن وحي يأتيه ممن لا يراه؟ هذا الأمر لسنا بصدد إثبات وجود الإله فيه، لأن الذي يستبصر بأدنى مستوى من الاستبصار يستشعر أن الذي يدور حوالينا في هذا الوجود ليس بصدفة، ولو لم يكن لذلك مثال إلا مجيء الشيخ حمزة هذه الليلة لكان في ذلك نوع اعتبار.
Subhanallah. That's a really amazing beginning, because it was literally what we were just talking about in the taxi on our way here. Almost identical, exactly what I said to him. I said to my companion Isa al-Bogari that I can understand how certain people might not believe in revelation, but how can anyone deny that there is a creator behind the creation? So we were just talking about this subject without knowing what the topic here was going to be. And these, I mean, بعد إذنك يعني ممكن أعلق شوي. I call these events in life because in this event itself is a proof for anybody in this room that might not believe in God. These events I call glimpses of the unseen ocean that we on the shore of the seen world catch by simply believing in it. And if anybody has ever looked at an ocean, when they look at an ocean, most people turn their backs to the land behind them, and they can actually spend hours just looking at the ocean, and yet there's a lot more on the land to look at. But there is an awe that we have of the ocean, and if you look at the ocean, and I grew up on a beach, or nearby a beach, and if you look at the ocean, one of the things as an ocean watcher I can testify, you begin to wait for certain things to jump out of the ocean. So I would go and watch the whales migrate sometimes off the Pacific Ocean. And you wait with expectation of these extraordinary beasts coming out of the sea. And believers, when they turn to God, it is like turning to that ocean of the unseen world. And what God does, because of your faith in it, is He allows you to catch glimpses of these extraordinary creatures that exist in that unseen ocean. And they are these wonderful coincidences, as they're referred to in secular parlance, that indicate to us that there is a deep order. So what Habib Ali was just saying was, the topic of his talk tonight is whether or not humanity is in need of revelation. And the question here is whether or not human beings can, given their intellectual capacities and the other abilities that they have with them, deem themselves independent and yet fulfill their needs that they have in terms of creating their societies and achieving their aims and objectives in this life, or whether or not they actually have need of a revelation from a creator. And while he said, as we were talking about earlier, there are people that might feel they have no need of a revelation, and yet, and this is more understandable than the denial of the existence of a intelligent force behind the universe. So while there are some people that might deny that there's communication from the creator of the universe, it is very hard to believe that there is not a creative power who is both intelligent and capable of bringing about this extraordinary phenomenon that we call existence.
الكلام عن تعامل الإنسان مع الشيء الخارجي عن إدراكه وفهمه وإرادته يرجع إلى أمرين: فهم للواقع الذي يحيط به، هذا الأمر الأول. ما الذي يحصل؟ هل هذا صدفة؟ هل هذا بتدبير الخالق؟ هل هناك قوة أخرى في هذا الوجود؟ هل هذا الأمر نوع خرق للأسباب أو ما يألفه العقل أم لا؟ هذا نوع، وهو فهم الواقع الذي يحيط به. من أنا؟ لماذا خلقت؟ ماذا يدور حوالي؟ ما هي الحقيقة التي تحيط بي؟ وهذا الأمر انشغل العالم اليوم بثقل تقدمه الحضاري المادي التجريبي بجزء أو بنظرية من نظريتين مهمتين لأينشتاين. النظرية الأولى نظرية النسبية. هذه النظرية هي التي يعيش العالم اليوم ويقتات عليها في دوران عجلة الحضارة التي يعيشها الناس اليوم، إلا أن هناك نظرية أخرى لا أغفلت أو تغافل الناس عنها، وهي نظرية الحقيقة المطلقة. هذا نوع من فهم الإنسان للاتصال بما وراء الإدراك.
So, if we look at how we interact and interrelate with our environs and our phenomenal world that we find ourselves in, there are two important aspects to this interaction. The first is how we understand reality, how we understand just the mere experience of being in existence. The question, what is my existential existence? Who am I? What am I here for? Is there purpose to my life? These are questions that all of us are confronted with, and this is the first aspect. If you look at the modern world and the extraordinary weight of modern progress and advancements that have so preoccupied modern humanity that they often fail to actually think about these very basic but ultimately very important questions. And if you look at there are two interesting views about the world that relate to the age we're in. One of them is the view of Einstein, which has been adopted or interpreted on many levels other than his physical explanation of certain phenomena. And that is the theory of relativity, the idea of the relativity of reality, that reality has this relative nature. But alongside that is another understanding that is often completely undermined or set aside or ignored, and that is the idea of absolute reality, that the reality that is not relative but is absolute.
النوع الثاني من صلة الإنسان بما لا يدرك حقيقة كنهه أو لا يحيط به التصرف الذي يحصل من الإنسان على أساس اتصال بشيء يعتقد أنه يرتبط بالوحي الذي يأتي من الغيب. النوع الأول فهم الإنسان لما يحيط به. النوع الثاني تصرف الإنسان على أساس تعامل مع الغيب، جعل الوحي الذي يأتي من الغيب دليلا له في كيفية فهمه لما يحيط به واتخاذه القرار ليفعل أو لا يفعل. أنت أردت أن تفعل شيئا ما، كيف تقرر أفعل أو لا أفعل؟ الناس تقول بالعقل. كلمة العقل كلمة واسعة الدلالة، على أي عقل أو بأي عقل ستتصرف؟ هل منطلق العقول واحد وسير العقول واحد؟ إذن ستكون التصرفات واحدة، وهذا غير صحيح. إذن هناك نوعان من التصرف يحصل من قبل الإنسان، إما تصرف بمرجعية لما تمليه عليه نفسه أو ما يفهمه من أنه إملاء العقل، أو تصرف برجوع إلى طرف آخر. هذا الطرف الآخر إما أن يكون محسوسا صاحب عقل غيره، أو نظام موجود في الوجود أسس على أيدي العقول البشرية، أو اتصال بمعنى آخر من المرجعية هو المقصود من كلامنا هذه الليلة.
So, in looking at this other aspect, one aspect is how we interpret this world. But the other, which is looking at the idea of an absolute reality, is how we interpret the metaphysical world. In other words, a dimension that's beyond this dimension. And this, we can ask ourselves, what is the reference that we're going to use to interpret our world? One of them, obviously, is the idea of the intellect. But when we look at the word itself, intellect is a word that has an immense number of possible interpretations. In other words, what exactly is consciousness itself? So if we look at that, there's problems just with trying to get at some specific definition of what that means itself. And so how then does a human being interpret this world? What is his ultimate reference? Is it his self, so that we have some type of self-referential basis for all of our understandings in both the physical universe and also whatever metaphysical implications exist? And they always do. So, or is there another type of reference? In other words, something that is beyond our own selves, that is outside of ourselves. Is this reference that we return to, is this something that can be, in essence, trusted or taken seriously? And this is going to be the subject of what I want to speak about.
عندما يكون مسار الإنسان صحيحا بالمعنى المكتمل للصحة، فإن أحد النوعين من التعامل أو من النظر إلى الغيب أو الفهم للغيب سيدل على الآخر. نحن مسلمون، في القاعة من المسلمين عدد ومن غير المسلمين أيضا عدد. المسلمون كذلك أصحاب الأديان السماوية من اليهود أو النصارى يعتقدون بوجود الإله الذي يوجه الخطاب إلى البشر ليعملوا. في حال نضج هذا المعتقد، هذه مسألة أولى، نضج المعتقد وصحة المعتقد. المسألة الثانية، في حال الصدق في تطبيق مقتضى هذا المعتقد، فهو سيدل الإنسان على كيفية التصرف بمقتضى الرجوع إلى الوحي. وعندما يكون المستمع غير مسلم أو غير مؤمن بوجود إله أو مرجع غيبي يرجع إليه، فإنه في حالة نظره إلى تصرفه في هذا الوجود، إذا بحث عن موافقة الفطرة التي خلق في الأصل عليها نقية، فهي ستدله حتى